Okay, so the next here is just something that I wanted to make a note about. It's not the internal workings like most of these videos are about. And I'm currently thinking on the playlist, I'll stick this in between video on registers and video on RAM. So that's probably where it goes in there. Just a short video talking, just some considerations to take. So I assume everybody knows what I'm holding here. Traditional power cable, plug one end in the wall, the other end in our device, gets power to our home computer quite reliably. Works great when we're at home. But the main reason we can't take our home computer with us to do other stuff, right? Because we need power with it. And personally, since I switched over to the Google Office stuff, the Google Docs, Google Sheets, I do 90%, maybe more on my phone. And I do that because there's no cords. The only cord consideration is once a day or so, pull out the charge cable. And so I'm a huge fan of charge cables and not big power lines that have to run continuously. So that's kind of the thing to discuss, the topic for today. Power consumption. Not super detailed, just some considerations to keep in mind while working with these devices, that this is something always there. And, it's really nice when we can just use a charge cable. It doesn't take much before we're no longer able to do it with battery, and we have to have a power cable. So just some considerations to take when putting things together for that. So just some quick things to consider today. Not super detailed, but the main consideration is that we have to power these things. So what is our device doing? Are we unaware of what our device can be used for? Is it a general all-purpose device? Right? Let's go back to the controllers for this. Don't even have to get into the fancy details. In all these examples, I'm usually just hooking up the microcontroller to do this. It's just a minimum, just a little controller, and just putting in the features that are needed for the example, because that's all that's needed for the example. Compared to, say, a general all-purpose little system-on-chip SoC controller, like a Raspberry Pi or a Latte Panda, if you're more familiar with Windows and would just like to just go ahead and use that way. That way you don't have to learn a new system to do it. There's a long list of them. Asus Tinkerboard, Odroids are really nice. Or maybe all your ideas, trying to turn your house into a smart home, the one you want, you ain't going to be able to do it without integrated AI support, so you got to step it up to an NVIDIA Jetson. Those type of things, the general purpose ones, we don't know what the user's going to be doing with it. Well, we know they'll need registers, so let's put a bunch of 8-bit registers together to make 32-bit registers and give them 16 of those. That should be plenty enough to cover whatever they need the registers for. But we have to power all of those registers. So if they don't need them, then that's just eating up the power. Same thing with RAM, right? The numbers keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If we're putting together a general purpose device and we don't know what the users are going to do, we want to put in a lot, right? At least 4 gig of RAM. Throw that in there. Maybe we want them to be able to do some AI support, and they're going to need 8 gig of RAM so that they can process through a huge database to train a deep learning algorithm. To have huge amounts of RAM for whatever the user might need. It's like, okay, we can throw that in there and just stick the chips in, hook them up, good to go. But then we're back to what often feels like a drag on those type of devices to me, and that we're restricted to this, right? We have some awesome features on the device, incredible speed, we have a super fast machine, all this RAM, all these other little things that might be needed, but we only get about 10 minutes battery life, and we're restricted to a cord again. And if possible, so this is just kind of if possible consideration, right? If we're making a general purpose device, we want to make a nice general purpose device. And then, like I just said, we're going to have those cord restrictions. But if we know what our device is doing, might as well take some time to stop and think through, make a list of what we need and then minimize those needs so that we only have to power what that device needs. And then instead of the power cable, we're, stuck to, we can use a charge cable once a day, plug up once a week or something, plug up the charge cable, get that battery back up, and not have the power cord running everywhere. Or in the case of like a smart kitchen, we can tie a Bluetooth chip into the coffee maker power without affecting the power going to the coffee maker as it's set up, right? All of those, just draw a couple extra volts off for a Bluetooth chip without affecting what else is there, and then that covers our need for that piece in a smart kitchen. Just some things to consider when possible, right? So, if you're making a generalized thing, you don't know what the user's going to do, okay, go all out, have fun with it, make one that's going to impress them. But remember, it has to be powered. So if you make a system that's going to impress people, you're probably not going to be able to do it from a battery. Or you're going to need a lot of power for it. But if possible, if you know what the device is doing, then take a moment to create a list. List out the things you need and figure out how much power you need, or figure out what you actually need and try to minimize it to just those pieces. And then your power consumption, you minimize the power consumption so that you don't need the massive power cables. You run off batteries and, minimize it so that you're getting 6 months use out of a double A battery. And, that's a whole lot. The users are going to be a whole lot happier with that. Battery lasts for a while. Cheap little battery, they just replace the battery when it's done, and they don't have extra cords running all over the place. So just something to keep in mind. I wanted to make that point somewhere and throw it in here. So I'm going to go ahead and shut up about it. Because it doesn't need to be a long video. Hopefully that was enough to get you thinking about this issue. Our stuff needs power. So if possible, consider what you have to do to minimize that and try to avoid the big bulky cables whenever possible.